Have you ever witnessed a moment of such profound disrespect that it made your blood boil? I was there when a group of arrogant bikers mocked a grieving war widow at her husband's memorial service. What those bikers didn't know was who else was watching and how quickly karma would come roaring down the road in military jeeps. Stay with me until the end to discover how this confrontation unfolded and the powerful lesson it taught everyone present about respect, honor, and the unbreakable bond between those who serve. Welcome to Honor Echoes, where we share the untold stories of our veterans and the moments that define their extraordinary legacy. I'm dedicated to preserving these powerful narratives so the sacrifices of our military heroes are never forgotten. Before I dive into this incredible story that I personally witnessed, take a second to subscribe to our channel. By hitting that subscribe button, you're helping ensure these important stories reach those who need to hear them. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next in this remarkable confrontation. It was a crisp autumn morning in rural Pennsylvania, the kind where the air feels clean enough to wash your soul. The leaves had begun their transformation, painting the landscape in warm oranges and fiery reds. I had driven 3 hours from my home in Maryland to attend the memorial service of Staff Sergeant Michael Collins, a decorated Army Ranger who had given his life during a covert operation in northern Syria 6 weeks earlier. I didn't know Michael personally, but as a former military correspondent who had spent years documenting the stories of soldiers, I felt compelled to be there. His story had touched me deeply. A man who had survived 4 tours, earned 2 Purple Hearts, only to fall during what was supposed to be his final mission before retirement. The ultimate sacrifice, just weeks before he was meant to return home to his wife Emma and their 5-year-old daughter Lily. The memorial was being held at Veterans Memorial Park, a beautiful stretch of land dedicated to honoring those who had served. A stone monument stood at its center, surrounded by American flags that fluttered gently in the breeze. About 70 people had gathered. Family members, fellow soldiers, and community members who had come to pay their respects. Emma Collins stood near the monument, a vision of quiet dignity despite her obvious grief. She wore a simple black dress, her blonde hair pulled back, holding her daughter's hand. Little Lily clutched a small American flag, occasionally waving it without fully understanding the weight of the occasion. The sight of them together, this newly made widow and the daughter who would grow up without her father, created a lump in my throat that I couldn't swallow away. The service was scheduled to begin at 11, and I arrived 20 minutes early, taking a seat in one of the folding chairs that had been arranged in neat rows. I watched as Emma greeted each arrival with remarkable composure, accepting condolences with grace that seemed almost superhuman given her circumstances. Michael's mother sat nearby, her face showing the unique anguish that only a parent who has lost a child can know. At precisely 10:53, I remember checking my watch. We heard them before we saw them. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines, growing louder as they approached. At first, I thought they might be the Patriot Guard Riders, the motorcycle group that often attends military funerals to shield mourning families from protesters. But as they pulled into the parking area adjacent to the memorial, I realized these weren't the respectful veterans I had expected. There were 7 of them, riding expensive Harley-Davidsons adorned with custom paintwork, but notably lacking any military or patriotic insignia. They parked haphazardly, taking up spaces reserved for family members, and dismounted with the swagger of men who enjoyed making their presence known. They wore leather vests over their jackets, sporting patches I didn't recognize, with phrases like "Road Kings" and "No Masters." The leader, at least he seemed to be the one the others deferred to, was a heavy-set man with a gray beard and mirrored sunglasses. He removed his helmet, revealing a bandana tied around his head, and lit a cigarette, blowing smoke in the direction of the gathering, despite the clear, no smoking signs posted throughout the park. A ripple of unease moved through the attendees. Two uniformed soldiers who were serving as honor guards exchanged glances, and one took a step forward before his companion placed a restraining hand on his arm. This was a solemn occasion. No one wanted a confrontation. The bikers made no move to join the service. Instead, they lounged against their motorcycles, talking loudly among themselves, occasionally laughing in a way that felt deliberately disruptive. I noticed Colonel James Peterson, Michael's commanding officer, watching them with narrowed eyes. He had arrived to present the flag to Emma, and his rigid posture communicated barely controlled anger. The memorial service began despite the background noise. The chaplain stepped forward, opening with a prayer that spoke of sacrifice and eternal peace. Emma stood straight-backed beside him, her composure remarkable, even as tears slid silently down her cheeks. The bikers' voices grew louder during moments of silence, their laughter cutting through the chaplain's words about honor and duty. When Emma stepped forward to speak, my admiration for her grew even deeper. Her voice was clear and unwavering as she shared stories of her husband, not just the soldier, but the man who sang off-key in the shower, who couldn't cook to save his life but tried anyway every Sunday morning, who read bedtime stories to Lily, using different voices for each character. Michael believed in service, she said, her eyes moving across the gathered faces. Not for glory or recognition, but because he felt it was the rent we pay for the privilege of living in this country. Her words were interrupted by the revving of a motorcycle engine. The leader of the biker group had started his Harley, the engine roaring needlessly. Several attendees turned to glare, but the man merely smirked and continued revving, the sound drowning out Emma's careful tribute. I watched as Emma faltered for the first time, her composure cracking slightly. She paused, waiting for the noise to subside, but the biker seemed to take this as encouragement, gunning the engine again while his companions laughed. Colonel Peterson stood abruptly. He was a tall man, his bearing unmistakably military, with close-cropped grey hair and a face weathered by deployments in harsh environments. He walked toward the bikers with measured steps, his uniform immaculate, medals glinting in the autumn sunlight. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We're honoring a fallen soldier. I'd appreciate your respect and silence." The biker leader cut his engine but didn't appear intimidated. He removed his sunglasses, revealing bloodshot eyes that regarded the colonel with open disdain. "Public park, ain't it?" he drawled. "Free country. Thought that's what you boys supposedly fight for. Huh?" His companion snickered, and I saw fury flash across the colonel's face before he controlled it. "A man died defending your right to be disrespectful," Peterson said evenly. "His widow and child are saying goodbye. I'm asking you, as a courtesy, to show some respect or move elsewhere." The biker stood, bringing himself chest to chest with Peterson. He was shorter but broader, with the soft look of someone whose toughness was mostly for show. "Or what?" he challenged, his breath visible in the cool air. "You gonna call for backup, soldier boy?" What happened next occurred so quickly that many attendees missed it. One of the other bikers had moved behind Colonel Peterson and now shoved him roughly. Peterson, caught off guard, stumbled forward. The lead biker used this opportunity to push him again, sending the colonel to one knee. A collective gasp rose from the memorial attendees. Two of Michael's fellow rangers started forward, but before they could intervene, Emma Collins' voice cut through the tension. "Stop." Just that one word, but delivered with such authority that everyone froze. Emma handed her daughter to Michael's mother and walked deliberately toward the confrontation. Her grief had transformed into something else, a cold, focused anger that radiated from her slight frame. She positioned herself between Colonel Peterson and the biker leader. At 5'4", she was dwarfed by both men, but somehow she dominated the space. "My husband died so that even people like you could live freely in this country," she said, her voice steady. "He would be the first to defend your right to be here, even now, but he would also be ashamed of your behavior." The biker leader seemed momentarily taken aback by her directness. His companion shifted uncomfortably, but he quickly recovered his bravado. "Lady, I didn't know your husband, and I'm sorry for your loss and all that." "But no, you didn't know him," Emma interrupted, her blue eyes boring into his. "You didn't know that he pulled 2 children from a burning building in Raqqa under sniper fire. You didn't know that he gave his blood plasma to a wounded civilian when supplies ran out at a field hospital. You didn't know that he carried a photo of our daughter in his helmet and read her letters every night, no matter how exhausted he was." She took a step closer to the man, who unconsciously backed up a step. "You didn't know that he respected everyone he met, till they gave him reason not to. And you certainly don't know what it cost him. What it cost me, and his daughter, and everyone who loved him. When he gave his life for principles that you're currently mocking." The biker's face had reddened, whether from anger or embarrassment was unclear. His companions were no longer laughing. "We're not mocking nothing," he muttered. "Just stopping by." "You're interrupting a memorial service for a fallen soldier," Emma said, her voice rising slightly. "You're laughing during our prayers and revving your engines while I'm trying to help my 5-year-old daughter understand why her daddy isn't coming home. If that's not mockery, what would you call it?" The man had no answer. For a moment, silence reigned, the first true silence since the bikers had arrived. Then, from the distance, came the sound of engines. Not motorcycles this time, but the distinctive rumble of military vehicles. 3 olive-drab Humvees turned into the park entrance, followed by 2 vintage military jeeps. They moved with purpose, quickly surrounding the area where the bikers had parked. The vehicles came to a stop, and the doors opened simultaneously. Men and women in uniform emerged, some in dress blues, others in combat fatigues. They didn't rush or shout. They simply formed a line, creating a human barrier between the memorial service and the bikers. I counted 23 of them in all, representing every branch of the military: Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard. A master sergeant stepped forward. He was a bear of a man, with massive shoulders and hands like sledgehammers. His face was impassive as he approached Emma. "Mrs. Collins," he said, removing his cap. "Master Sergeant Wade Wilson, ma'am. I served with Mike in Afghanistan in 2017. We heard about the service and came to pay our respects." He glanced at the bikers. "Is there a problem here?" Before Emma could answer, a new voice joined the conversation. "There's no problem." The voice belonged to an elderly man who had emerged from one of the jeeps. He walked with a slight limp, but carried himself with undeniable dignity. He wore a VFW cap adorned with pins and ribbons, and his weathered face spoke of decades of life experience. He approached the leader of the bikers and looked him up and down with the kind of appraisal that seemed to take measure of not just the man's appearance, but his character. "Son," the elderly veteran said, "my name is Harold Jenkins. I stormed the beach at Normandy when I was 18 years old. I watched my best friends die beside me in the sand." He gestured toward the memorial. "That young man you're disrespecting? He's cut from the same cloth as the heroes I served with." The biker leader had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We didn't mean any disrespect to actual veterans," he muttered. "We just stopped to check out the bikes some of these guys rode in on." Harold Jenkins didn't blink. "Is that right? Well, since you're so interested in veterans' motorcycles, let me introduce you to some people." He gestured, and from the group of newly arrived military personnel, 5 men and 2 women stepped forward. They weren't in uniform like the others, instead wearing leather vests similar to the bikers. But theirs were adorned with military patches, unit insignias, and American flags. "This is the real deal Patriot Guard," Jenkins explained. Veterans who ride to honor their fallen brothers and sisters. People who understand that the freedom to ride those expensive machines you're sitting on was paid for with blood. The leader of the Patriot Guard, a woman with silver-streaked black hair and sergeant stripes tattooed on her forearm, addressed the bikers directly. "We're not here to start trouble," she said, her voice carrying the distinctive Texas drawl. "We're here to honor Staff Sergeant Collins and support his family. Now, you have two choices. You can join us in showing proper respect, or you can leave. Either way, the disrespect stops now." The biker leader looked around, taking in the growing number of military personnel, the Patriot Guard members, and the resolute expression on Emma Collins's face. Whatever false bravado had fueled his behavior was rapidly evaporating. "We were just leaving anyway," he said, trying to salvage some dignity. He nodded to his companions, who began mounting their motorcycles. As they prepared to depart, Harold Jenkins approached their leader once more. "One more thing," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out something small and pressed it into the biker's palm. "Take this. Remember this day." The biker opened his hand to reveal a challenge coin, the kind exchanged by military members to signify membership and boost morale. This one bore the insignia of the 29th Infantry Division that had fought at Normandy. "I don't deserve this," the biker said, attempting to hand it back. "No, you don't," Jenkins agreed, "but you need it more than I do. Maybe it'll remind you that the freedom to be disrespectful was paid for by those who deserve your respect." The biker stared at the coin for a long moment, then pocketed it with a nod. Without another word, he mounted his motorcycle. His group started their engines, quietly this time, and rode away, leaving the memorial in peace. As they disappeared down the road, Emma Collins turned to the assembled veterans, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you," she said simply. "Michael would have been proud to see this." Master Sergeant Wilson smiled gently. "We take care of our own, ma'am. Always have, always will." The memorial service resumed, but with a different energy. The chairs that had been occupied by family members and local attendees were now interspersed with uniformed service members and veterans. The Patriot Guard riders stood at attention around the perimeter, a silent honor guard for their fallen brother. When Colonel Peterson presented the folded American flag to Emma, he did so before an audience that truly understood the weight of that moment. The culmination of a life given in service, the symbol of a nation's gratitude, the cold comfort of honor in the face of overwhelming loss. After the service, I watched as Emma introduced her daughter to the veterans who had come to stand by them. Little Lily, initially shy, blossomed under their kind attention. One of the female soldiers knelt to her level and showed her a photo of herself with Michael during their deployment, telling the child stories about her father's kindness and courage. The girl's eyes lit up with pride, clutching the photo as if it were a precious treasure. I approached Harold Jenkins as the gathering began to disperse. The elderly veteran was sitting on a bench near the monument, seeming tired but satisfied. "That was quite a moment," I said, introducing myself and explaining my former role as a military correspondent. "Would you mind if I asked what made you give that man your challenge coin?" Jenkins looked up at me, his eyes clear and shrewd despite his advanced age. "Sometimes, son, the people who show the least respect are the ones most in need of understanding what respect means. That young fella, he's lost, trying to find meaning in all the wrong places." He gestured toward the departing veterans, the supportive community, Emma and Lily surrounded by people who cared. "This is what it's about. Not the uniform, not the medals, not even the sacrifice itself. It's about the bonds between us. That biker and his friends, they don't have this. Maybe seeing it today taught them something." As I prepared to leave, I noticed Emma Collins standing alone by her husband's memorial photograph. I hesitated, then approached her, offering my condolences and admiration for her composure during the confrontation. She smiled sadly. Michael always said that true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about standing firm in your values even when it's difficult. She touched her husband's photograph gently. Those men today, they thought they were strong because they could disrupt our grief. They didn't understand that enduring grief with dignity takes far more strength than creating it. I left the memorial with those words echoing in my mind. As I drove home, I reflected on what I had witnessed, not just the confrontation and its resolution, but the powerful demonstration of the military family coming together to support one of their own. The bikers had arrived intending to assert their freedom, only to be shown a profound lesson about what freedom actually costs and what it truly means. 3 weeks later, I received an email from Emma Collins. She told me that the leader of the biker group had returned to the memorial site alone. He had left flowers and a handwritten letter of apology. She enclosed a photo of the letter, which read in part, "I didn't understand what I was disrespecting that day. The coin I was given hasn't left my pocket since. It reminds me that my freedom was paid for by people better than myself. I can never undo what I did, but I want you to know that it changed something in me." Emma ended her email with words that I think perfectly capture what I witnessed that day. Michael believed that every person has the capacity for growth and change. He would have forgiven those men instantly and hoped that they found whatever was missing in their lives. In that way, even in death, he continues to serve, changing hearts and minds, one at a time. Stories like this one remind us that the bonds formed in military service extend far beyond active duty, creating a community that stands together in times of need. What began as a moment of disrespect transformed into a powerful demonstration of unity and honor, a testament to the enduring spirit of our service members and their families. The confrontation between those bikers and the war widow could have escalated into something ugly, but instead it became an opportunity for understanding and growth. It shows us how the military community doesn't just protect our nation abroad. They stand up for respect and dignity here at home. If this story moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to Honor Echoes. By subscribing, you're helping preserve these important narratives and ensuring that the sacrifices of our veterans are never forgotten. Your support allows me to continue documenting these powerful moments that might otherwise be lost to time. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you witnessed a moment where veterans came together to support one of their own? Or perhaps you have a story about an unexpected lesson in respect and honor. I read every comment and value your perspectives. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video.